Before you check your phone, before you plan your schedule, before you speak to anyone else, ask yourself this one question. Who has the first voice in your day? Because the voice you listen to first will quietly shape every decision that follows. Many people rush into their mornings asking for strength later, clarity later, peace later. But faith teaches a different order. Guidance comes before movement. Alignment comes before effort. If you want your day to walk in peace instead of pressure, wisdom instead of worry, then everything begins here. Always pray first before you start your day. Many people begin their day believing a quiet lie. They think success comes from moving fast, from checking the phone first, from rushing into plans, tasks, and conversations before their feet even touch the ground. They believe that if they do not start early, they will fall behind. That if they pause, they will lose momentum. That prayer can wait until later, after the important things are handled. But ask yourself, what if this belief has been shaping your days without your permission? What if the reason many days feel heavy, scattered, or fruitless is not because you lacked effort, but because you began without God? You were not created to wake up and immediately carry the weight of the day alone. You were not designed to decide direction before you listen for wisdom. You were not meant to step into battles without first standing in prayer. Always pray first before you start your day. Not as a ritual, not as a habit done out of fear, but as an act of trust. Not your will, but His will. Not your strength, but His strength. Not your plans, but His purpose. When you pray first, you are not delaying productivity. You are aligning it. You are not losing time. You are redeeming it. Many chase visible results while ignoring invisible foundations, but faith teaches a different order. What is unseen comes first. What is hidden shapes what will later be revealed. Growth does not begin with movement. Growth begins with surrender. Picture a field before the sun rises. The soil looks still, quiet, empty. To the untrained eye, nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, there is work taking place. Moisture is settling. Seeds are responding. Roots are preparing to push deeper. No farmer curses the field for being quiet in the morning. He understands that stillness is part of growth. Prayer is like the unseen work. It prepares the heart. It softens the soil of your spirit. It creates space for God to move before the noise of the world begins to speak. When you pray first, you are not asking God to follow your agenda. You are placing your agenda on the altar. You are saying, guide my thoughts before they scatter. Guard my words before I speak. Order my steps before I choose a path. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. Faith has always worked this way. Preparation comes before manifestation. Alignment comes before advancement. There is a spiritual law at work here. God's timing flows best through prepared vessels. When preparation is rushed, timing feels delayed. When preparation is honored, timing feels precise. You may wonder why some efforts seem blessed while others feel strained. Often the difference is not the effort itself, but whether it was carried out in God's presence or in self-reliance. Prayer is not about convincing God. It is about preparing you. Think about moments of pressure in your life. Pressure does not create what is inside you. It reveals it. When the day becomes demanding, what comes out of you first? Anxiety, control, frustration, or trust? Gratitude, obedience. A heart that prays first is a heart that is already anchored before the pressure arrives. Consider a believer who begins the day without prayer, stepping immediately into work, responsibilities, and decisions. When conflict arises, there is little margin. When plans change, irritation grows. The heart reacts because it has not been centered. Now consider another. The believer who begins the day in prayer, the workload may be the same. The challenges may be just as real. But there is an inner steadiness, a quiet awareness that God is present. Pressure still comes, but it meets a prepared heart. Another example unfolds quietly in ordinary life. A parent starts the day without prayer, rushing children, multitasking, already stressed. Small delays feel overwhelming. Words are spoken too quickly. Later comes regret. Another parent begins the day with prayer, asking for patience, wisdom, and love. The same delays happen, but the response is different. The heart was tuned before the noise began. Focused obedience is sacred stewardship. Distraction is not just a productivity problem. It is a spiritual one. What you give your first attention to often sets the direction of your heart. When your first moments belong to God, your focus is guarded. When your first moments belong to noise, your focus is divided. You cannot serve clarity while feeding confusion. Prayer teaches you to choose obedience over impulse, to listen before acting, to respond rather than react. This is how spiritual growth unfolds. Learn the truth. Apply it daily. Examine your heart honestly. Correct what is misaligned. Remain faithful even when progress feels slow. Day by day, step by step, faithfulness compounds quietly. Discipline in prayer is not driven by emotion. Some mornings you will feel inspired. Many mornings you will not. Faithfulness does not wait for motivation. It moves because it trusts. Prayer is not powerful because of how you feel when you pray. It is powerful because of who you are speaking to. Obedience is proven in consistency, not intensity. God often works through seasons. There is a season to sow, a season to wait, a season to harvest. Those who rush the seasons become weary. Those who honor the seasons become strong. Morning prayer is a way of respecting the season of beginning. You are telling God, before I receive, I submit. Before I speak, listen. Before I act, I trust. Reflection and correction are gifts, not punishments. When you pray first, you invite God to refine your thinking, to adjust your direction, to humble your assumptions. This is how growth stays healthy. Pride resists correction. Faith welcomes it. Humility keeps you teachable. Over time, spiritual momentum builds. Small acts of obedience accumulate. One prayerful morning leads to another. One surrendered decision shapes the next. You may not see immediate breakthrough, but you will notice steadiness, clarity, peace that does not depend on circumstances. This is the fruit of beginning with God. Breakthrough is not an event reserved for special moments. It is a daily walk, a daily choosing of His will over your own. Each morning is an invitation. Will you carry the day alone, or will you walk with God from the very first breath? As you prepare to start your day, pause, not out of fear, out of trust. Let your first words be prayer. Let your first thoughts be surrendered. Let your first desire be alignment. Day by day, this practice reshapes the heart. It trains the spirit. It honors God. And as you continue in this rhythm, you begin to realize something deep and steady. The days you pray first are not always easier, but they are always guided. The weight does not disappear, but it is carried differently. The challenges do not vanish, but they no longer define you. Prayer does not remove responsibility. It restores perspective. You begin to notice how prayer before the day softens reactions later in the day. When something unexpected interrupts your plans, there is less panic. When someone speaks harshly, there is more grace. When decisions must be made quickly, there is a quiet confidence that you are not alone. This is not coincidence. This is alignment. Ask yourself gently, what has been forming my mornings? What has been shaping my first thoughts? What voice do I listen to before all others? Because the first voice often becomes the loudest voice, and the loudest voice often directs the heart. When you pray first, you are not escaping responsibility. You are stepping into it with wisdom. You are acknowledging that your strength has limits, but God's does not. Not your will, but His will. Not your timing, but His timing. Not your understanding, but His wisdom. Prayer is where your plans are refined, where your fears are named and released, where your hopes are placed in God's hands. It is where the noise quiets and clarity begins to form. This is why prayer belongs at the beginning, not as an afterthought, not as a backup, but as the foundation. There will be mornings when prayer feels dry, when words do not flow easily. Do not measure prayer by feeling. Measure it by faithfulness. Even silent prayer is heard. Even simple prayer is received. Even tired prayer matters. God is not impressed by length. He honors sincerity. As seasons change, your mornings will change. Responsibilities will grow. Demands will increase. But prayer remains constant. It adapts, it anchors. It reminds you who you belong to. And when the day ends, you can look back and see how guidance appeared in small ways, how restraint protected you, how peace sustained you. This is the quiet power of beginning with God. It does not announce itself loudly. It works steadily, It shapes character. It builds endurance. It produces fruit in time. And now, as you sit with these words, consider tomorrow morning, not with pressure, with invitation. When you wake, before the rush begins, before the world speaks, choose prayer, even if it is brief, even if it is simple, even if it is whispered. Place the day in God's hands. Let your heart say, guide me, order me, teach me, strengthen me, not my will, but yours. And as you rise, carry that alignment with you. Step into the day not alone, but accompanied by faith. Because when you always pray first before you start your day, you are not just changing your morning, you are training your heart to walk with God in everything that follows. And that quiet discipline, practiced day by day, becomes a source of strength that carries you through seasons you never expected, prepares you for responsibilities you have not yet seen, and anchors you when the path ahead feels uncertain. This is how a life is built, not in bursts of inspiration, but in daily surrender, not in loud declarations, but in faithful beginnings. Each morning becomes a small altar, each prayer becomes a seed, and over time, what was planted in quiet obedience grows into a life marked by peace, clarity, and trust. So as you breathe, as you prepare, as you begin, remember this truth. The day does not belong to you alone, it belongs to God. And when you give Him the first moments, He faithfully guides the rest. Let that understanding settle in your heart. Let it shape your habits. Let it redefine what it means to begin well. And as you continue this practice, you will find that prayer is no longer something you try to fit into the day. It becomes the doorway through which the entire day flows. And from that doorway, you step forward not hurried, not anxious, but grounded, aware, and ready to walk in obedience, one faithful step at a time, trusting that even when the road ahead is unclear, the one who walks with you sees the end from the beginning, and He is faithful to lead you, morning by morning, day by day, season by season, deeper into the life He has prepared for you, shaping you quietly, strengthening you steadily, and teaching you to remain faithful even when progress feels hidden, even when answers seem delayed, even when the work of the heart happens beneath the surface when no one else can see. Because that is where the most important growth always begins. In the stillness, in the surrender, in the decision to pray first before anything else takes your attention, allowing God to order your steps before you take them, to steady your spirit before you respond, and to remind you again and again that you were never meant to walk this path alone, but to begin each day in communion, in trust, and in humble obedience, knowing that as you do, your life slowly but surely becomes a testimony not of rushed effort, but of faithful alignment, not of self-made strength, but of God-given endurance, and that this daily choice, repeated without applause, without urgency, without fear, is what carries you forward when emotions fade and circumstances shift, anchoring you in a peace that remains, guiding you with wisdom that does not fail, and forming in you a heart that knows where to turn first, not only in the morning, but in every moment that follows, as you continue to walk, to learn, to apply, to examine, to correct, and to remain faithful, trusting that each prayer, spoken or silent, is heard, is held, and is used by God to shape the path ahead in ways you may not yet see, but will one day understand when you look back and realize that it all began with a simple, obedient decision to pray first, to place the day in His hands, and to step forward not in haste, but in faith, allowing that faith to guide you gently, steadily, and faithfully into whatever lies ahead, knowing that the one who invites you to begin with prayer is also the one who promises to walk with you through every hour that follows, carrying you through moments of clarity and confusion alike, teaching you to listen more than you speak, to trust more than you control, and to remain rooted even when the winds of the day grow strong, because a heart that begins with God learns how to remain with God, and that remaining becomes the source of strength that sustains you long after the morning has passed, shaping not only how you start your day, but how you live your life, with patience, with humility, and with a steady awareness that every step forward is safest when it is taken in prayer, surrendered, aligned, and guided by the one who knows you fully and loves you completely, inviting you again tomorrow and the next day and the next to begin once more, quietly, faithfully, and obediently, with prayer. With prayer as your first movement, your first decision, your first act of trust. Because when prayer becomes the beginning, it slowly becomes the center, and when it becomes the center, it shapes everything else around it. Over time, you start to notice how your mornings influence your evenings, how the way you begin determines how you endure. A day started in prayer does not promise ease, but it offers direction. It does not remove struggle, but it reframes it. You stop asking only for outcomes and begin asking for obedience. You stop demanding quick answers and start seeking steady guidance. Ask yourself quietly, how many days have I tried to manage without first surrendering? How often have I asked God to bless what I already decided instead of allowing Him to decide with me? Prayer first is not about control. It is about release. It is about laying down the illusion that you must carry everything alone. When you pray first, you are acknowledging that your wisdom is partial, but God's is complete. That your sight is limited, but His sees beyond today. This humility opens doors that effort alone cannot. It softens your heart so correction can enter without resistance. It keeps you teachable when pride would rather defend itself. There is a quiet strength that forms in those who practice this discipline. It is not loud. It does not seek recognition. It shows itself in patience under pressure, in restraint when provoked, in faithfulness when results are delayed. This strength is born in the unseen place of prayer. Day by day, the practice deepens. Some prayers are spoken clearly. Others are simply a breath, a pause, a moment of surrender. God honors them all. Prayer does not need to be elaborate to be effective. It needs to be honest. It needs to be offered as time passes. You begin to sense spiritual momentum, not the kind that rushes ahead, but the kind that carries you forward steadily. Each morning builds on the last. Each act of obedience compounds. What once felt forced begins to feel natural. What once required effort becomes instinct. This is how faith grows strong, not through dramatic moments alone, but through consistent alignment. Not through emotional highs, but through disciplined faithfulness. Prayer first trains your heart to look upward before it looks outward. You may still face seasons where answers seem distant, where clarity feels delayed. These seasons are not wasted. They are refining. Just as a harvest takes time, so does spiritual maturity. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active trust. When you pray first, you learn to respect God as timing. You learn that rushing ahead often leads to weariness, while waiting with God leads to strength. The seed does not sprout the day it is planted, but it is still alive beneath the soil. In the same way, prayers offered faithfully are working even when you cannot yet see the result. Reflection becomes part of your rhythm. You begin to examine your responses, to notice patterns, to invite correction. This is not self-criticism. It is spiritual awareness. God shapes those who are willing to look honestly at their hearts. Humility keeps you growing. It reminds you that no matter how far you have come, there is always more to learn. Prayer keeps humility alive. It reminds you daily that you depend on grace, not achievement. Over time, you realize that breakthrough often arrives quietly. It shows up as peace where anxiety once lived, as clarity where confusion once reigned, as endurance where fatigue once dominated. These changes may seem small, but they are profound. Breakthrough is not always a moment. Often it is a process, a steady walk, a daily choice to trust. Each morning you pray first. You are stepping into that process again. You start to see your life differently, not as a series of disconnected days, but as a journey guided by God. Each morning, prayer becomes a checkpoint, a moment to realign, a reminder of purpose. When distractions call for your attention, prayer helps you choose focus. When demands compete for priority, prayer helps you discern what matters most. Focus becomes stewardship. You learn to guard your attention because you understand its value. This focused obedience brings freedom. You are no longer pulled in every direction. You move with intention, with awareness, with trust. Not your will, but His will. There will be days when you forget, days when you rush, days when prayer slips to the side. Do not let guilt define those moments. Let them remind you why prayer matters. Return again. Begin again. Faithfulness is not about perfection. It is about persistence. God welcomes you each morning with patience, He does not measure your worth by consistency alone. He meets you where you are and invites you forward. Prayer is always an open door. As you continue this practice, you may find that prayer begins to spill beyond the morning. It accompanies you through the day, in quiet moments, in difficult conversations, in decisions big and small. What began as a morning discipline becomes a continual awareness. This awareness shapes how you see others, how you respond to challenges, how you handle success. Gratitude grows, pride diminishes, trust deepens. You begin to understand that the goal was never simply to start the day with prayer. The goal was to live the day in communion. The morning was just the doorway. And now, as you sit with this understanding, allow it to settle gently. There is no rush, no pressure, just invitation. Tomorrow morning will come, and with it a choice. You can begin as you always have, or you can pause. Breathe, surrender, pray first. Let your first words belong to God. Let your first thoughts be aligned. Let your first desire be obedience. Day by day, this choice will shape you more than you realize. This is how faith becomes steady, how discipline becomes natural, how spiritual growth takes root. And when you look back, you will not remember every task you completed. You will remember the peace that carried you, the guidance that protected you, the strength that sustained you, all because you chose again and again to begin with prayer. This is the quiet invitation offered to you each morning, to trust before striving, to listen before leading, to surrender before acting. And as you accept it, your days become less about control and more about communion, less about hurry and more about purpose, less about self and more about God. So let tomorrow begin differently. Let it begin in stillness. Let it begin in trust. Let it begin in prayer. And as you walk forward step by step, may you discover that always praying first before you start your day is not just a habit, but a way of life. A life rooted in faith, guided by obedience, strengthened by discipline, and marked by steady spiritual growth. As you continue to walk with God, morning by morning, trusting that He who begins the work is faithful to carry it forward, shaping you quietly, leading you patiently, and reminding you through every sunrise that you are never alone when you choose to begin with Him.